Amity University has been ranked among the top 3% universities globally by QS and Times Higher Education, the world's leading university ranking organizations. It has been ranked India's #1 not-for-profit private university for the past 7 years. Amity has also set a new standard of academic excellence in India by becoming Asia's only not-for-profit university to be awarded US Regional Accreditation as well as India's only university to be accredited by the UK's Quality Assurance Agency for Higher Education. The university is part of the not-for-profit Amity Education Group, established more than 2 decades ago by the Chauhan family. Today, the group is home to over 175,000 brilliant students, pursuing over 400 programs in 60 diverse disciplines across 9 universities and 26 schools. Amity Group's vision of establishing a global knowledge network has led to establishing international campuses in London, Singapore, Dubai, New York, San Francisco, Amsterdam, Abu Dhabi, Sharjah, Tashkent, Mauritius, Nairobi and South Africa. Amity's strong focus on research and innovation has led to the filing of more than 1,200 patents, which according to the Controller General of Patents in India is the highest number of patents filed by any individual Indian university. Amity is also engaged in conducting more than 300 high-end government-funded as well as international research projects, including those funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, United States Agency for International Development and the Leverhulme Trust UK. In the field of management, the university has developed more than 2,500 case studies in recent years that have been bought in 106 countries by over 2,300 leading institutions and organizations. The university has also pioneered the concept of industry-led institutions, where leading organizations such as the multinational conglomerate Tata, the UK's Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors and the Confederation of Indian Industry CII have set up institutions in partnership with Amity on campus. Attracting some of the most brilliant students, Amity has instituted India's largest private scholarship programs, benefiting over 25,000 students. These students are blazing a trail of success, having filed over 100 patents and published 1,500 Scopus indexed research papers. It has also awarded over 2,000 PhD fellowships to brilliant researchers to carry out path-breaking research in thrust areas that will impact the development of the country. The award-winning Innovation Incubator on campus has nurtured more than 100 companies and attracted investments of over $40 million. The campus also has many high-end research centers, including ones set up with Nobel laureates.
Good evening, everyone. As per the vision of Honorable Founder President Sir and Honorable Chancellor Sir, Amity Directorate of Management and Allied Areas, ADMA, under the guidance of Professor Dr. Gurinder Singh, Honorable Group Vice Chancellor and Director General ADMA, and Professor Dr. Ramanjit Singh, Director ADMA, is organizing ADMA Online International FDP. On behalf of Amity University and ADMA, I, Dr. Pranay Verma, Professor of Marketing, welcome to the Online International FDP on building research skills for career development and nation building by Professor Dr. Hema Krishnan, who is currently a professor of Williams College of Business, Xavier University, Cincinnati, Ohio, United States. I also welcome to the dais the Director of ADMA, Dr. Ramanjit Singh, to this event. He is a source of constant motivation for all of us. I also welcome to this event the Associate Editor of all ADMA journals, Dr. Kirandeep Bedi, and the Editorial Assistant at ADMA, Ms. Soji Thomas, to this related and relevant FDP on the topic, building research skills for career development and nation building. This program aims to build the research skills for career development of faculty members, research scholars, and students across all domains. It will familiarize the participants on key areas of research and the role of research in shaping national public policies. The session is planned in two parts. In the first part, from 5:30 to 6:45 p.m., Dr. Hema shall deliver on research to succeed in your career, while the second session from 6:50 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. shall be on research to help the nation shaping public policy. 10 minutes for hands-on exercise and 10 minutes for discussion on the exercise has been included in the allocated time for the first session. At the end of first session, a hands-on exercise shall be conducted where all attendees are expected to participate. Selective best answers by attendees shall be given a chance to explain their answers in the session and an opportunity to discuss their views with Dr. Hema by unmuting themselves. Now I request Dr. Kirandeep Bedi to introduce the speaker to the attendees. Meanwhile, the YouTube viewers are requested to mention their names in the YouTube chat box.
Thank you, sir. A very warm welcome to all present here. We are really privileged to have with us today Professor Dr. Hema Krishnan, who is currently professor at Williams College of Business, Xavier University, Cincinnati, Ohio, United States. She obtained her MS in physics from IIT New Delhi, India, MBA from IIM Bangalore, India, and PhD in business administration from the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, United States in 1993. She has been with Xavier University, Cincinnati since 1993. Professor Hema has extensive leadership and administrative experience. Since 2004, she has served as chair of the Management and Entrepreneurship Department at Xavier University, Cincinnati for 5 years, and for 5 years until 2014 as Associate Dean of the Williams College of Business at Xavier University, where she led the college's successful maintenance of AACSP accreditation. She has several years of business experience at the managerial level in the petroleum industry in India before leaving for the USA to pursue her PhD. Currently, in addition to her usual responsibilities, she is chairperson of the board for Sotani International, Cincinnati, Ohio, United States, a non-profit organization in global healthcare. Sotani is on the front lines of fighting pandemics with some of the most vulnerable people, those living with HIV/AIDS in sub-Saharan Africa. Dr. Hema has made several keynote speeches and has served as distinguished speaker on the topics of strategic leadership, women in leadership, international business, teaching pedagogy, entrepreneurship, and mergers and acquisitions in industry and academia on numerous occasions in the US and Europe, and in emerging countries such as India, Kenya, and Rwanda. She was the president of the Xavier chapter of Beta Gamma Sigma Society, a scholastic society, during 2003 to 2008. Professor Hema conducts research in the areas of mergers and acquisitions, healthcare, top management teams, and corporate restructuring, and has published over 35 articles in premier journals of business such as Strategic Management Journal, Academy Best Papers Proceedings, Journal of Management Studies, Journal of Business Research, Business and Society, Journal of Small Business Studies, Journal of Small Business Management, Journal of Government and Non-Profit Accounting, among others. She has also published numerous articles in newspapers and magazines such as Indian Express, The Hindu, Better India, and the AACSP magazine Visit on business and leadership topics. In her newspaper articles, she shares her insight on best business practices in the USA and India. She is an esteemed board member of Amity Journal of Entrepreneurship. She is also a regular contributor on LinkedIn. Dr. Hema has offered a number of FDPs and MDPs in different areas of research and pedagogy, training to faculty and administrators in the USA, India, Kenya, Rwanda, and various countries. We are really delighted to be here for this enriching online international faculty development program with Professor Dr. Hema Krishnan. Now, may I request Professor Dr. Hema Krishnan to proceed with the session on building research skills for career development and nation building. Over to you, Professor Krishnan.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you very much for the invitation to present to the participants this morning. This is morning here, so I want to wish you all a good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whichever part of the world you are all in. So as mentioned, we are going to have two parts in this particular FDP. The first part is going to be a longer session where we are going to discuss what skills are needed to succeed in our career on the research front. and the second part is going to be for nation building. But most of the time we are going to spend on the first part so that we can have a healthy and a very insightful interaction with all of you participants. So let me get started, and I will start with a screen share. So just I need your patience for a few seconds. And so let me check before I get started whether everybody can see the screen.
Yes, we can see. Yes, we can
Wonderful.
see.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so as mentioned, this first part is the main part that I'm going to focus on, because we want to focus on how do we build our research skills to succeed in our career. Okay, let me see. So in the first part are the following agenda items. The first item would be how to conduct interesting and high quality research. Second, what are the 3 types of research? Number 3, what are the constituencies for our research? Number 4, why collaboration matters? And I will draw from my personal experience. And the last point in part 1, why research should be synergistic with teaching and professional development goals. So as mentioned, at this time, when we reach that point number 5 in the first part, you will be administered an exercise, and there are 3 short questions. So please take a few minutes to fill out your responses to those 3 questions and then put them in the chat box. And then we will look at your responses, and we'll try to interact with as many of the participants as possible. So this is what we would like to do. So going to now part 1, research to succeed in your career, our career. I want to start this particular part by going back 30 years in time. 1990, I was enrolled in the corporate strategy class in United States in Knoxville, Tennessee. I really did not know anything about research, papers or journals, because I mean, my background was after finishing my education in India and after working for the petroleum company. I really didn't know anything about what even research meant. Plus, I was quite young those days. But this, after 30 years, I just remember a handful of articles. But the article which comes to my mind, at the top of my mind, is this article which was distributed by my corporate strategy professor in 1990. It was a very short article. It was, and this article's title was, "That's Interesting." I still remember those days, 30 years ago, when the professor said, let us focus on, interesting research. That is most important in the sense, is the research topic interesting to you, as the writer? Is it going to be interesting to somebody else who's going to be reading your paper? Folks, let's face it, 30 years is a long time. What is our attention span today? Be honest. If I take any article, I don't feel like reading it if it's not interesting. And I'm sure the same thing is applicable to all of you who are so much younger than me. Many of you are, like young enough to be my children or even my grandkids. So do we have the patience to read some very boring article, even though it may be a great research article? So this is the question you may want to ask yourself, not in the early stage of your career. I agree that in the early stage it's different, but as you progress in your research career, ask this question, is it interesting to me? Is it going to be interesting to some other person? That question is extremely important. When I look at all my publications, I can guarantee that only 15% of the articles are interesting to me. Just 6 or 7 articles, 6 to 7, 8 articles, and only 2-3 areas are interesting to me. When I go and look back at my publications, I am not interested in those articles, really. They are that boring. So that question you need to ask. The next, which is extremely important, and even if you do not get anything from this FTP, I just would like you to leave with this one word, and that's called, or 2 words, high quality. Folks, I just cannot stress enough how important quality is. I know that in many places, like people think quantity is better than quality, but that is not the case, because it is the quality which gives you many, many, many things. So what does quality, why are we interested in quality? Quality, number 1, it enhances your prestige. It enhances your brand name recognition in the field. Number 2, Quality enhances the brand name of your institution. The institution you graduated from, the institution where you're currently working, it really enhances the quality of your institution. And in the process, if all the faculty and the researchers are producing great quality work, it can actually enhance the quality of the ecosystem in which you are positioned and your institution is positioned. It's unbelievable what quality means. If you go back and look at all these universities in United States, and if you go into those web pages, people start by discussing those high impact journal articles. They don't talk about our teaching evaluations. I may get 4 out of 5 teaching evaluation, or I may get a 4.5 next semester. That's not going to be said on the web page. And that is why quality is so important. How do we define quality? Your article has got to be blind reviewed. The reviewer should not know who you are. It should be peer reviewed, double blind, and sometimes 3 reviewers actually would, review your article. The quality of the editorial board of the journal where you are publishing, it's absolutely critical. When people go up for tenure and promotion in our university and in other universities here, they also look, if you just say, I published this article in this journal, that journal, some journals we all know, they are indeed high quality. In every discipline, there are top 5 journals are considered those A+ journals where the acceptance rate is under 5%. Then we have the next 20 to 30 journals which are in the A category, but the acceptance rate may be 10 to 12% and so on. So beyond the acceptance rate is the quality of the editorial board of the journal. So if somebody is publishing in some 100th ranked journal, which actually the acceptance rate may be only 25%, which means it's still a good journal, but we don't know. I don't know about some engineering discipline. I don't know about nursing. I am serving on the rank and tenure committee for Xavier University in Cincinnati. So we will be reviewing applications, people who are going up for tenure and promotion, faculty in nursing, education, in physics, chemistry, biology, in business administration, in all these disciplines. So how do I know what the quality is in somebody is publishing in chemistry or biology? So that is why these are the things we look at to decide whether something is a high quality journal. Impact factor. What is the impact factor of your journal? How many average citations is the journal earning? And so on. Non-predatory, very important. Non-predatory meaning these unethical, these kind of journals. Let's not publish in those journals. Let's not publish in those predatory journals. Indexed, Scopus, Web of Science, Kebbles. So where do we find your journal? Is it indexed in any of these places? So folks, all I'm saying is if you're in the early stage of your career, as you start thinking about your research pipeline, do focus on these elements to see whether all these this checklist is met. I'd rather have just a handful of publications in my career which are all fairly good quality than have hundreds and thousands of journal articles which do not mean anything, because they will not give you any satisfaction as you ascend in your career. So this is for the journal. Now as a researcher, how many citations are you getting per article? Each of those articles. If I have about 35 journal articles, I have to ask this question, am I getting citations for each of those journal articles? That's a very important quality indicator. So I can go to Google Scholar, if you just go and type anybody's name you want and go to Google Scholar, you can see how many citations they're having for each of their publications. History, total historical context. And that is very, very, and that gives you with all these charts and all that. So, which journal and which article of yours continues to be very popular. If I go and look at my own journal, Google Scholar, I find, and later on I will discuss, just a handful of my articles out of the 35, 38 articles are really getting citations year after year, really, so that is what it means by quality. Articles impact in the discipline. Articles impact also in the practitioner area. If you are in science or in engineering or in pharmacy or in medicine or undertaking law studies, wherever, how is it, or a business faculty member, is it having an impact in the practical world, in the business community, in the general community? And you need to, ask this question. So how do we know whether your article is having an impact in the practitioner world? Because if the findings from your articles are quoted in the popular press, is it coming in some science journal, in the Nature journal, in Wall Street Journal, in Forbes, Fortune, and so on? In the local newspaper, are they quoting, from your article? So that's what we mean by, your article has started to have an impact. And last, of course, are you getting invitations to present your work, at all these other conferences, other institutions, and so on? I think I have spent a lot of time in discussing what we mean by a high quality journal article and what we mean by a high quality journal. And I'm sure there are many other indicators, and I'll be very happy during the question answer session to learn from you what could be some other potential criteria for deciding whether a journal or an article is of high quality. So now let's get back, to now we said, how a journal article is of a high quality, and, whether you are a high quality researcher. So let's go back to the basics. How do we develop a research stream? For those of you who are very well advanced, in your career and research career, there could, what I'm saying may not be of any interest to you. So I sort of apologize. I just want to also gear some of my insight and my thought process with folks who are in their early stages of research career. Number one, you have to be an expert in the literature in your business, in your discipline. So in 1991, that is when, I was slowly moving towards the mergers and acquisitions discipline, because I wrote, some article in my corporate strategy class in 1991. And the professor said that this has got enough, interest factor and enough meat, for you to take this topic and start thinking about your dissertation. So then whether I liked it or not, I am, in the mergers and acquisitions field. And he told me, and he was really, I'm going to discuss about him and what a great mentor he was throughout this talk today. He said, you have got to be thorough in your literature, totally thorough. What does I mean by thorough? Although I'm a strategy professor, I read all the articles related to mergers and acquisitions in the strategy field, in the finance field, in the economics field, in the accountancy field. Those days, we did not have anything like management information system, 1991. So I read everything associated with mergers and acquisitions in every single discipline of business, everything. So I remember those days going and doing the photocopying. We didn't have all this kind of a PDF anyway. So that was the first thing for the sources of research. Number two, you got to read the literature in the complementary disciplines. So not only you should be reading about mergers, acquisitions, if that's our discipline within business, I've got to read about that in other sectors. If the oil industry is engaging in huge mergers and acquisitions, I've got to read some petroleum related journals and so on to understand what is happening there on the field where this discipline is concerned. Same thing goes, like if you're a biology major or any science major, you will not only be thorough with that particular research topic from your own discipline, but interdisciplinary. Like if you're doing genetics, you will have to learn from biology discipline, from chemistry, biomedical engineering, and so on. Already interdisciplinary, you need to focus on. If you're a, pharmacy major, you will have to read about, what's happening in the medical field, what is happening in the biology field, chemistry field, all those fields. So that is what we mean by reading the literature in complementary disciplines. Attending conferences, research workshops, organizing what we call as brown bag, lunch kind of research seminars. We all take our lunch, we go sit, in a conference room and we share our research ideas. Invite researchers to your institution and then read the trade journals, newspaper articles, and any magazines related to your discipline. Now, COVID-19 has become a very big deal, and this impact of COVID is going to be studied in every discipline, starting with medicine and pharmacy. The world is interested in one thing right now: how soon we can develop a vaccination for COVID-19, right? So those disciplines, obviously the most important disciplines are medicine, pharmacy, biochemistry, genetics, and all those disciplines are critical. But then we've also then, we have to read even newspaper articles because we want to see what's happening, how to, when we say vaccination, it is not these kind of technical journals. Community spread. Why is community spread greater in some part of the world and not so much in some other part of the world, right? So that may be, that data is available in newspapers and other trade magazines. So although you are a pharmacy researcher, you will have to know Why is the community spread so much less in A, whereas it is so much more in B? So this is what we mean by reading, trade journals and newspaper articles related to your discipline, which may not be a research type of article. Once you do all that, my young participants, once we do all that, you are going to get lots and lots of research ideas. You are going to identify so many gaps in the prevalent literature. You are going to have enough ideas to last a lifetime. I guarantee, please take it from me, Yeah. So that is what I would like to stress on. The most important point on this slide, once you do this heavy duty reading, just reading, and you will be able to come up with some gaps in the literature. So now you've come up with lots of gaps. You've come up with 10 great ideas. But as we all know, 10 great ideas mean nothing. You have to bring those ideas to fruition. So let's start with one of the 10 ideas, just one of the 10 ideas. We will keep those other 9 ideas for the next 20 years. Take that one idea and then start thinking more about it, more and more about it. And the way I like to approach, once I have an idea is, I always like to take this kind of a sheet of paper. I'm old world thinking. I start my ideas in this kind of a sheet of paper where I just start writing. And those of you, all you young folks, you can do that on your computer. I think you can prepare your 2-page outline on your computer. So, whenever you think about your idea, just whatever it may be, start, writing those, little bullet point, those items on the, in a Word document in your computer. Keep thinking. Today you write something. Just think about, first you've got to develop the focus and the clarity. So once you start developing the 2-page outline, what is my research question? How am I going to approach my literature review? How am I going to collect my data, and how am I going to analyze my data? And how am I going to make my paper interesting? That word interesting I introduced some minutes ago. How am I going to make it interesting to myself first and then to the audience? That is very important. So keep working on it. It's not going to happen in 1 week. This 2-page outline is not going to happen in 2 weeks. And now as I'm getting older and older, my 2-page outlines are taking me 2 years to develop. 2 years, folks, but you're all young. So hopefully your 2-page outline can be developed within 2 months. Because once it's okay, that investment of time, 2 months, in developing just an outline for your research is very well worth your time. I guarantee that's an excellent investment of your time. And then, so these things you will get once you do your 2-page outline. What's your idea? Clear, crystal clear. Here is my outline, the 4 things I'm going to do in this paper. Yeah, that's clear. And so at this stage, you're getting ready to get some feedback. Now, after those 2 months of idea generation and the 2-page outline, you're ready to now, because in our head, it's the perfect, brilliant idea. But once we present it or we just share it with somebody trusted, maybe it's not so great after all. The last 5 years, I have developed 10, I think, 2-page outlines, of which 8 I eliminated. Yeah, they were just not good enough. They were good in my head, but they were not good when somebody else read it, right? So out of the 10, there are 2 which I'm proceeding with. So this is just a repeat of what I said. You're reviewing the journal articles from your discipline, from complementary disciplines, and all the other things I said. Anecdotal example is very important in every discipline. Anecdotal example is not like basic research. It is like what is happening in the world, in the community. Just like I mentioned with the COVID-19 situation, when you can, read about, read a newspaper, for example, in Eastern Africa, what's happening with community spread, in COVID-19. That's what we mean by an anecdotal example. Then if you are a law graduate or a law researcher, just read about, like some very, groundbreaking kind of Supreme Court, decisions in other parts of the world. What is it that court decided on? What was the major issue? It's a very general type of an example. That's an anecdotal example. It may not be applicable to your country, but believe me, as the world is getting more and more interconnected, more and more similar, and aspirations are all merging, maybe that Supreme Court ruling on one particular important social issue in that part of the world, may help you in even developing your research for this part of the world as a law graduate. Okay, so that is why collecting those anecdotal examples, regardless of your discipline, science, engineering, law, public policy, economics, business, education, it is very important. So at this stage now, you can start, getting some feedback from your colleagues from the 2-page idea, whether it is even making sense, trusted colleagues, of course. trusted colleagues. Folks, I do have to say, because although I'm sounding very idealistic, I live in a practical world where we know that everybody's ethical standards are not like our ethical standards. Everyone's outlook is not like ours. So you want to make sure that you're approaching trusted colleagues. Believe me, that's really very important. And it pains me to say that, but I've learned that, from so many decades of experience. So once you share and you bounce your idea and brainstorm with trusted colleagues, you're ready for your research question and state the research question. State it very, very simply in very simple language. I have worn multiple hats. I have worn a hat as a student, as a researcher, as a faculty member, then as like a writer, sending my like an author, sending my work out to journals, as as a reviewer, then as a ad hoc reviewer, and then as an editorial board member. So it is, and then as a member of a dissertation committee, as a chair of a PhD committee, and now I'm serving on the rank and tenure committee as well. So these are all very multiple kind of job descriptions I've had in the research category itself, starting from a student to ending up here when in the final innings of my career. So I can tell you this much: if our research question is not very clearly stated and not in simple language, we are not interested. I'm just not interested in proceeding further and going to page number 2. State it very clearly in simple language. And the audience has got to know very early that it is very different from the previous studies. You have to make a case for that. The audience will have to find it interesting. And early on, please don't keep the audience guessing. Tell us, what is your central and novel contribution? I know you're going to write 30 pages of a journal article with 20 tables. Please tell me early on the page 1 itself, what your research question is and how you're going to be contributing to the field. That is very, very important. Number 2, these are the 2 things in the red. The second important thing is your research question should have only 1 question. If you're trying to do 3 things in your research question, that's 3 papers. Please. For basic research, you should have 1 research question. Don't say, I'm doing this and then I'm doing this on. Even though you may have a mediating relationship in your regression analysis, a moderating relationship, which means you're doing multiple things, structural equation or whatever you may be doing, regardless of the methodology you're using, your research question should have, very simply said, just 1 simple question. And that is why it is important to brainstorm with other trusted colleagues. So the data collection, I have only 1 thing to say here because I don't want to spend too much time here, and that is given in red. You've got to be honest. You have got to be honest. Absolutely critical. And number 2, like this, which is I do not have on the slide, which I have seen from my own experience. It is okay to collect more data than less data, because you may think, I don't need this data, it's not relevant because I'm going to, this professor said I have to say my research question should be very simple. Yes, I said that, but you may never know when the data are going to be important for paper number 2. So when I started collecting data in 1991-92 for the mergers and acquisition study, I was collecting data on and on and on, I was collecting this data, this committee member said do this data, so I collected that data. And by the time I graduated in 1993, 2 years on the dissertation, I was totally frustrated. I looked at when I defended my dissertation, I said, my God, I have collected so much data, but my dissertation, 200-page dissertation has only 20% of the data. Only 20%. Why did I get so stressed? Why did I collect all this irrelevant data? No, it was not irrelevant. Because later on in 93, when I finished my PhD and started working as a faculty member, that data became most useful. And the final paper from that old data was finally published in the year 2007. So friends, data collection started in 91. Data collection ended in 93, and the 2 years of data that I collected resulted in my first major publication, A+ publication, which was my dissertation publication, which was published. It came in print in 97. It was accepted in 94. The next paper from the data which I did not do in the dissertation was published in 2000 or 2001. And then papers kept on coming. So I got 4 or 5 papers And all my great papers, most of my great papers actually, came from that data where I was collecting like crazy during the 2-year period. So that is why it's okay to collect more data than less data. Then this is something like, describing the contributions, stating your paper's contributions, giving credit to others, acknowledging the weakness in your paper. Because once you acknowledge the weakness in your paper, it gives opening for other researchers to pursue, to improve on that. And you yourself can do on that in the next paper, paper number 2 or paper number 3. So make sure you're doing that. Then, folks, I want to say just one thing about writing. And please, this is the only thing, even if, this is the only thing from the next 5 minutes, whatever I say about writing, you get out of the talk, it's okay. Everybody is in the writing business. Whether you are an engineering graduate, law graduate, medical graduate, pharmacy graduate, business graduate, whatever graduate, education graduate, whatever you are. We may not be journalists, we may not be novelists, publishing, books and novels, but everybody is in the writing business. Please, this one point I would like you to write down. We are all in the writing business. Even after we become faculty members, we are still, and when we do make our syllabus, and then, when we do that, we are still in the writing business. So one lesson we have to learn is we should know absolutely, how to write. And how do we write? We have to write well. We have got to be clear. We've got to be concise. Don't use very hard words and jargons. Nobody understands. Make it very easy. All of you, many of you grew up in the Harry Potter stage. I did not grow up Harry Potter time, but my son grew up Harry Potter time. And honestly, if you read Harry Potter's, look at where the Shakespeare and all were, and where is Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling. See the difference in the writing quality. But what the difference is, J.K. Rowling wrote in a very simple manner. So simple that suddenly everybody wants to read. Children want to read. Children who did not want to read 15 years ago are suddenly are standing in the queue at midnight to get the next Harry Potter book. Why? It was clear, it was concise, it was simple. So make sure that, your research papers are, I'm not saying you should write like J.K. Rowling, that kind of writing, but what I'm saying is it's got to be concise and simple. Very important. And writing the paper, one clear idea, I want to again go back in memory lane, because let me tell you folks, I did not know how to write until 1992. Yes, I did not know how to write. I went to good universities in India. I got a good education. I was in the petroleum company writing, memos and briefs and everything when I was as an employee. And I was, I had this big ego when I came to United States. I grew up, reading Shakespeare and Charles Dickens and all those things. So I'm no one can teach me how to write. In 1992, I wrote the first draft of my dissertation, and I walked into my advisor's office. It was exactly 12 noon, and I will never forget that day. I had a 2-hour meeting with him. He reviewed my dissertation draft, and when I walked out at 2 p.m., I knew, now I told myself, I know, today only I knew how to write. I did not know how to write when I walked into that office at 12 noon on a fall, in like August or September of 1992. But when I walked out at 2 p.m., I knew how to write. Folks, what happened in those 2 hours? Let me quickly share with you. I am sort of, coming from the, 5-year integrated physics, background, so I think very left-brained. I think in bullet point kind of items, and so on. So when I produced my dissertation draft, but the nice thing about my dissertation advisor was, he looked at my draft, he had read the draft the previous days, because it was already, he had read it before I went into his office. And he was so encouraging. He said, Hema, this is an excellent dissertation. And I was just lifting my collar up, because in India, the institutions I went to, they always said bad job. In India, you're either always, those days, now everybody says good job in India too. Those days, even if you get 95 out of 100, it's still not a great job because somebody got 100. So I never, in India, if somebody said, great job, then only I know that I did really well. They shake their head and all that stuff, then I know I can do better. So when I walk into that office and my professor tells me, great job, I said, right now I have to give it to the, to the publishing, like somebody has to type it out and do carbon, those cotton paper to get it published. It's great. Because one thing I've learned in United States, they were very encouraging. This is called constructive feedback, not negative feedback. So I said, this is the perfect, dissertation. So he brought one whiteboard. I had 8 sections in my dissertation. He wrote down each section. So he said, this is how you have positioned your dissertation, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then I said, okay. He brought another whiteboard and he started throwing arrows. So section number 7 became section number 1. Section number 5 became section number 3. Then I was wondering, so in front of my eyes, all 7 sections were rearranged in the completely different order in board number 2. Then slowly I said, maybe it's not such a great job. Then he brings a board number 3, whiteboard. And then he told me how to position inside the section, how to write so that section 1 gets connected to section 2, like a railway wagon, like a train, like a railway, like a train, whole train. Every wagon has got to be connected to every other wagon, and so on. Only then the train will move, and so on. And then there were many things I learned in those 2 hours, which I never ever learned before, and I never ever learned afterwards in my life. So I just wanted to mention that writing is very, very important. We can always improve at any stage in our career. So now you've written your paper, like on all that, you're sending your first draft for feedback, then to very trusted colleagues. Then you can start sending your draft to colleagues who are not really, experts in your area. And then keep on revising your draft. And when you've revised your draft many times, you can now send your paper to a conference, to some other conference for a review. That is something you can do. So once you have, sent your paper to a conference for review, and it is very, very important to present at a conference in the early stages of your career. I have to admit that I am giving you advice and suggestion, which I am not following in my career right now. In the last 5 to 7 years, I'm really not sending any of my research papers to any conference for review because it is okay. Because as I mentioned, I'm in the last innings of my career. So it is okay. I've already won this test match. I feel I won the test match. I'm just playing this innings for fun. For those of you who follow cricket, and which is still my favorite sport too, anyway. But in the early and middle stages of your career, it is really important for you to send, your paper, to some conference or, present at some other university, because you are going to get a lot of feedback, which you're not going to get, from, just by looking at the paper on your own. But once you go to the difference between olden days and now is, you should not delay though. So those days, we used to go to the conference, we used to present the paper, we used to come back, and we used to take several months, maybe even a year, to then wrap up the paper, based on the feedback, and then send it to a journal. But nowadays, because of online and everything, and plus because there is a dearth of good ideas. So the minute you go and present in some, journal, some conference, there is a danger, of your idea getting stolen. And other people may have better infrastructure, more students, who knows what they have. So they may take your idea, they may actually, finish up your idea before you can finish and work on your idea. So I am going to recommend that do not delay this. Nowadays, you should not delay. So even when you're going to a conference to present your journal, to present your paper so that you can send it to a journal, you've got to start working on the revision. Absolutely do not delay. Send out your paper to a peer-reviewed, high-quality journal as soon as the paper has been accepted for presentation at the conference itself. Start doing that, so that as soon as you come from the conference, within a few days, you are ready to send that paper out. The time is very important. So please make sure you're not delaying there. Reviewers, I don't want to harp on this. You do have to take your reviewers very seriously. I know we don't like them. Right now, one paper has, come up for revision for me. I said, oh my God, I don't have the energy to do this. But I know that their criticism is very, very valid, very valid. And so I will have to take it very seriously. So that's, so do take it very seriously. You have to address absolutely all of their, their suggestions. Writing tips, I don't want to spend much time here. I don't know about your discipline. Honestly, I know that you are all from various disciplines, but for my own discipline, business discipline, which means includes all the business disciplines, I like to do tables. tables are a great way to produce, make your, report concise, and also for you to basically, to provide complete information about what you were doing and so on. So it is really very helpful. And if all these, readers don't have much time, they can look at your table and they can get a lot of information out of that. I think, one of the papers which has come up for revision in some B+ journal, it was written, I didn't spend much time on it. I think the only reason it has come up for a revision and not rejected, actually I was expecting it to be rejected. And then I thought once I get some feedback, I sent it to B-level journal. But I was very surprised that it came for just a revision. And I think the only thing which helped me to do the revision, which they think they saw some good in the paper, only two things. Maybe they found the topic interesting. And number two, I had some good tables, only reason. Otherwise, I know my own work. I don't think it was that great, for them to, to give it an offer of a revision anyway. So make sure, for me, the tables have worked really well. One more thing which is really strange, and which it is, one can debate this, but, from my experience, I find that the title of the paper is also extremely important. The title you're giving your research paper, is it really communicating what that paper is about? As a reviewer, I've read so many articles, which have come to me for review, where there is no connection or very little connection between what the title of the paper is and what this person is trying to do in the 30 pages. So there has got to be that great connection, and perfect harmony and perfect balance between, between that title and what you're going to be writing about in the next 30 pages. This is something I learned from my own experience. Keeping your title brief and simple is very important, folks. Nowadays, I have so much time, so I just like to, look to see, how come, some journal articles, I'm getting so many more citations, and some journal articles, which I think are so great, I'm not getting as many. So what is going on? So I examined 3 of my papers. And so if the last paper number 3 was my dissertation paper, the one which, I collected like so much data, which I published, which was accepted in 94 and published in 97 in the journal, which was an A+ journal. And that is number 3. Then the same data I used to publish paper number 2, which eventually was published in 2007. But the same data, imagine, from 91, 92. And then paper number 1, the title over here, some of the data, just a little bit of the data came from where, some of the ideas came from when I worked on my dissertation in 92, 93. And finally, it was published in 2000 and maybe that was 2007. I don't even remember when it was. But in terms of the title, and actually in terms of the journal quality, paper number 3 is the A+ journal. Really, it is the A+ journal. It's the top 5 in our discipline. Paper number 2 is an A journal, A quality journal, okay? And paper number 1 is sort of also an A quality journal. But which one got the most citations? Paper number 1. Why? Then I was thinking, why is it that a paper which appeared in A-level journal is got so many more citations than a paper which, which appeared in an A+ journal, and which really comes from many years of my work? The answer is, I thought, maybe it's the title. Maybe when I said, a few good women on top management teams, maybe that was a little bit more interesting compared to when I said diversification, top management team complementarity. Is performance improved by merging similar or dissimilar teams? Who knows? Maybe that's the reason. So, I don't know. So when, this is all a little trick, in the sense that this is not the most important, this is not the deal breaker, but this is something for you to think about when you're at that stage getting ready to send your paper. Paper number 2, also, the won many awards, like interestingly, and I will tell about it, later when I talk about the collaboration as to why paper number 2 won so many awards for me. That will be, but the data came from my dissertation. Okay, so let's, example is later. The research types, there are 3 types of research types, the basic, applied, and pedagogy. I'll just give you one example to move on. So let me take the example of, COVID-19. Okay, so let us say that you're doing your PhD in pharmacy. If you're doing your PhD in pharmacy, when you do basic research associated or genetics, if you're doing basic research on COVID-19, you're going to study the RNA, the DNAs, the RNA, the whole molecular structure of the cell and so on, just to understand, how this particular virus, the COVID-19, how this coronavirus, why this causes COVID-19. So that is what we mean by basic research. So that is your job as a basic researcher, just to identify the molecular structure, the genetic makeup, how it is attacking the cells and so on. That's all. If you are an applied researcher, the next thing is now you got to see, okay, now this is the molecular structure, the genetic structure. What type of drug, what type of medicines will help us to address this particular and to kill this particular virus, which is attacking the RNA structure of the cell. So that is applied research. Pedagogy researcher, if you are a pharmacy professor and you have pharmacy students sitting in your classroom, and then you want to teach them about, COVID-19, about all these, these viruses, and so on. When you're as a professor, as a faculty member, as a teacher, and then what you get out of that, if you're going to be like writing articles about that, how you're teaching this particular subject, that's called pedagogy. So I hope it is sort of clear to you, just the example of COVID-19. And you can now take this example for any discipline. Basic research, understanding the molecular structure, the genetic makeup and all that, and how it is attacking the cells. Applied research, finding the medications and the cure, and how those drugs are helping you to address and to kill the virus. And with pedagogy, how you are teaching this particular subject in the classroom, and what type of papers you are generating. So you have to decide and ask yourself where you are in your research career. What type of research you should pursue. When should you pursue this type of research? What are the benefits of each type, and what are the challenges? Because there is not much time, I don't want to get into much of this detail, but you can, if you're interested, you can always just explore this as a research idea if you want that. My research, as I mentioned, in so many decades now, in my early stages of my career, I did basic research. And my little suggestion for all of you who are in your early stage of your career, better to do basic research. Folks, if you're looking for jobs, if you're looking for, like brand name recognition and so on, in the early stages of the career, it is always good to do basic research. Really, it is really good to do some kind of basic research. That is very important. Because that is what gives you those A+ journals. Most of the A+ journals in every discipline, they cater to basic research. Pedagogy, what I'm teaching in my classroom, there is no A+ journal for that. I have A journals, they say, hey, Hema, how are you teaching strategy in your class? Can you give me a roadmap? Then I did a paper like that, and I gave a roadmap, how to teach strategy at the MBA level. Guess what? At the most, it is only a B+ journal I can write that to, not to basic. Early stage of your career, please do basic research. Then the 2008 to 14 was a very unproductive period in my career. It was unproductive for two reasons. One, I was in administration. And all of you are in administration, once you're in administration, you have no time for anything else. Putting out fires, taking care of this issue, that issue, problem solving. That's the only thing we do. So that was one reason why I did not do any research. Number two, my son was at that stage in those 6-7 years. He went from middle school, finishing up high school, and getting ready for college. So I wanted to focus. My role was more as an administrator and as a mother, that's all. So it was a very unproductive period. I just did whatever I was capable of doing. That's all. 2015, my son entered college, and so around 2014 onwards, I did not have any energy for basic research. Zero energy to collect data, to analyze data. I said, now I don't have to do that, So maybe I can do applied research, I can do action pedagogy research. So you can think about where you are in your research career, before to do these things. Constituencies, whom are you doing your research for? And I'm going to move on. I want to spend a few minutes on collaboration, because the questions you're going to respond to, in the question session, in the exercise session, are going to be on collaboration. Collaboration, it is extremely difficult to pursue research on our own. We are not perfect. We don't have the perfect set of skills unless you are Albert Einstein. And maybe you are Albert Einstein and you can do your, your own research. Then I really applaud you, and I look forward to reading your work in Nature or Science. No, seriously, really. So there are such people in the world, and there are these Nobel laureates, and even they work with teams. But if such a thing is there, then that is fine. But for most of us, 99.9%, we are not blessed with the perfect set of skills to do our own research. Number two, doing research on our own, it takes too much time. It's a lot of energy depletion. And then there are all kinds of research constraints. So that is why these are the questions you can ask, about the collaboration. like whom do you collaborate with, when to collaborate, should you collaborate, how should you collaborate, why should you collaborate. So even if you don't get anything out of the slide, the one thing you can just keep in mind is why to collaborate, how to collaborate, when to collaborate, like where to collaborate, and so on. When, where, how, why. Just that's all. And try to respond to these questions. Getting great research mentors is very important, and nurturing the relationship. I want to share a quick example before I move on about the collaboration, and that's my next slide. I did collaborate from day one from my career because I was not blessed with perfect skill sets. I had serious holes in my skills, many things I did not know how to do well. I did collaborate, with everybody right from day one of my career. And if this paper, which I'm revising right now, I mentioned, if it gets through, that will be the only third paper out of 38 papers, which is sole authored. So out of 38 papers, 35 I have got co-authors. And if this paper comes through, it will be only 3 in my entire career. And I'm very happy, because, that's all I'm capable of doing. So 1990s dissertation advisors, and then late 90s trusted colleagues. I want to give a quick example of the 2000s before I move on. And I was collaborating only with my dissertation advisors and a couple of colleagues. Suddenly in the mergers and acquisitions field, in the year 2000, my colleague told me that his dissertation advisor was a guru, the strategy guru in mergers and acquisition discipline. I mean, like amazing, #1 researcher in mergers and acquisitions in the strategy discipline. And he was on the dissertation committee for my colleague in Xavier University. So I said, oh, I want to meet this person. He said, at the Academy conference in Washington, DC in the year 2000 or 2001, this professor is going to be attending the conference. So I will make sure to get, an audience, for you with him, just to shake hands with him. That's all. My only idea was to shake hands with this great guy. So I still remember that day in Washington, DC, in some hotel where we had the conference. So this great man, this great researcher is coming down the escalator, and behind him, just like a neta, like a politician, so many people are coming behind him, trying to get a little bit of his time. And I'm going up the escalator, with my colleague, and then I find him coming this way. Then my colleague said, oh, that's my professor. One thing I learned riding on Delhi Transport Corporation bus, DTC bus in Delhi. I was an expert in getting into the the mini bus and the Delhi bus, because if anybody knows anything about olden Delhi, now you have great metro. Olden days, 1970s, 1980s, you didn't, those days we didn't know where the bus was going to stand, So I'm standing here with my friend, getting ready to go to school or college. Bus, depending on the speed, is the bus going to stop there? Is the driver going to stop the other side? Or is he going to stop exactly in the middle? So depending on, I would watch it so carefully. I knew exactly how to run. Should I run this side? Should I run that, or should I stay there? And every time I was the first person to get onto the DTC bus. I was that good. And even the year 2001, my skills did not desert me because I was not that old 19 years ago. I said, okay, there is this great man coming down and I'm going up. I went down this going up escalator. I ran down the going up escalator, and when he was descending, I am positioned ready in front of him. And my colleague, who was actually raised in South Korea, but I don't know why, maybe he also got this thing, this is like a game. He also started coming down like that. And then the long story short, I got an audience with him, and he ended up as my co-author in 3 of some of my great papers. And that was a paper #2, which I had, listed acquisition premium. That paper, which I had my dissertation data, I collected the data, I analyzed the data. I had a great research idea, but, I was losing steam, because I'm already a mother, raising a child and in administration. So finally, we all collaborated on that paper. So so what I'm trying to say is, and then 2014 onwards, I'm now collaborating with colleagues from other universities. So collaboration has really worked very well for me. So here, my personal journey, I think I already mentioned, what I've been doing. I've been, with the pedagogy research, 2014 onwards, now I don't have any energy for basic research, as I mentioned, so what I did was in 2014, I decided to give up administration because, I just wanted to, I have to say that, running on 4 cylinders, literally running mentally and physically, on 4 cylinders, I was sort of exhausted. I just wanted to have a more comfortable life. And I just wanted to tell myself that, I have, worked so hard, everything. So maybe time for me to relax and just do things I want to do. So 2014, after I decided to become a faculty member again, then I didn't know what type of research to pursue. But by then, pedagogy was becoming really very, very exciting and interesting to everybody. People wanted to know how to do pedagogy research. So in every discipline now, there is a journal of management education, journal of finance education, journal of accounting education, journal of marketing education. So these are education related journals. And I don't know about my engineering friends and my science friends, medical friends. I'm sure in all your disciplines also, there are pedagogy journals, So if you're an advanced stage of your career, and if your institution likes you, it is okay with you doing this kind of research, so please try to do pedagogy research. It is a lot easier to do pedagogy research because it is what you're doing in the classroom. It is not A+. There is not any major data collection or analysis. And because you teach the subject, you are very, very thorough. You really know what to do, how to, because your journey in the classroom is your own personal journey, is a unique journey. I am teaching strategy in this classroom. My colleague is teaching my strategy in the next classroom, same syllabus, but the journey is different, right? Because the way we teach, the uniqueness is there. So let us take our uniqueness, right? And then and if there are some lessons we learned from the classroom, let us try to, share that with other professors so we can all learn from each other. And then this is from the 2014 onwards, I'm teaching two major courses at the MBA level. One is the capstone class. In every discipline, there is a capstone class, as we know, right? Even pharmacy, everything has capstone. That's the senior year project or final master's thesis. We can call it a master's thesis if you want. And then there's an emerging markets class. So what I do is I draw from the case brief. I write my own cases, anecdotal example, and then I write, how to teach this class, in a traditional format, how to teach this class in an online format. Nowadays, folks, my friends, there is so much idea out there for pedagogy because of online, remote, be there, out there. Tell everybody how you switched suddenly now in this new environment, the new normal. How can we teach the same? How can we teach medicine, for example? How can we teach anatomy in an online class? How can we teach physiology in an online class? How can we teach biochemistry? The reason I'm taking these examples, these are much harder to teach in an online format than management, or some other class. That's why I'm giving this example. So please do that, and there'll be so many great ideas, and please do it sooner rather than later. And of course, this is also, as I mentioned, it is synergistic with the service activities. And it is also more interesting for people from other parts of the world also, because now we are all in this remote format. There is something we all can learn, from other parts of the world as well. The third, thing is, it has given a great, great opportunity to publish these kind of findings, to publish our insight, so on, in business magazines and newspapers and so on, which are related to my basic research stream. It all has a practical orientation. I was very surprised, when I visited India in the year 2014-15, I was teaching this emerging markets class, BRIC nations. So one of the nations I do in the BRICS nations is obviously India. So when I was doing more research about how fast food restaurants operate in India versus how fast food restaurants operate in United States, I found some very, very interesting differences and similarities. And they were great things that India could learn from US and US could learn from India. Okay. Two things. It is so both the countries can learn from each other how to operate a fast food restaurant industry. I didn't have energy to send this like a case study. So I observed these practices. Then bank, my dad, my late father used to take me to the bank to see how Indian banks are functioning. I used to compare it with how American banks are functioning. I was very surprised when I sent out the first article to the Hindu newspaper, and immediately it got published. And then the person invited me to write more such papers. So during that period, 2015, 2016, I tried to write all these, compare and contrast India versus United States from a business orientation. How do banks function? How do school teachers function? What are the difference and similarity between faculty, university professors, and so on? So you will always get, when you do pedagogy research, you will always get great ideas to publish your work in newspapers and other trade journals kind of thing, which gives you much more satisfaction. Folks, I want to tell you, the first article I published in the Hindu, I got 2,000 emails, whereas my great research paper, my A+ research work, I barely have 510 citations for that article. after 13 years, I've got only 510 citations for that article number 1, which I put in out there, a few good women. Whereas I got 2,000 email for an ordinary little, like a newspaper column, so this is the difference, the reach. So I'm not saying you should all write in newspaper, because that is not going to get me tenure and promotion in my university. I still have to do the basic research, but there is more fun and you can improve your brand name recognition. So personal journey, just to end this section, research should be for professional development. You want to be a better teacher. You want to be a better writer. You want to be a better communicator. You want to be a better adapter of technology. And you want to be a well-rounded professional. So that is for the professional development part. So the question is, all this on the professional development, has it helped me on the personal dimension? Nothing to do with my career, okay? On the personal front, collaborating with others and just trying to do different types of research and so on, and understanding and admitting that I am not a perfect person. I am not blessed with major skills. I'm just an ordinary person. And the only way I can succeed is by having collaboration with others. Helped me actually just to, in the process, just in networking skills. So now I have become, I grew up in an environment we were always very afraid to ask. My late dad used to say, in India, especially, growing up as a, girl, woman in India, we don't go out there, we don't try to shake hands, say, hello kind of thing. I have seen that in America, it's quite different. People are quite bold that way, they want to go and shake hands, and go to a party, shake hands. I never did that till the year 2001, when my colleague introduced me to his dissertation advisor. When I was chasing this man up and down the escalator, I didn't do that till that age, because I was, growing up in India, women are sort of shy, I don't know, nowadays things are different. So we would never network. We were afraid. My father always used to say, what's the harm in asking? What are they going to say? If you ask, at the most, they are going to say no. You ask 20 people, are you willing to read my paper? 20 people are going to say, no, I don't have time to read your paper. But after 1 month, ask 20 other people, are you going to read my paper? Maybe 19 will say no. At that time, one person may say, I'm willing to read your paper. That's all you need. You don't need a million people to collaborate with or to network with. You need that one person who is going to say yes. So I have to say that slowly, not being afraid to ask, not being afraid has really helped me. And now, what I'm seeing in my career in the last 15 years, olden days, yes, if I ask 20 people, maybe all 20 said no. But now, if I ask 20 people, 10 are going to say yes. Isn't that amazing? Success rate is amazing. So don't be shy. It is okay to ask. And especially if there are any, female members in the audience, and also male members, because even shyness, and being, not being out there to ask, and, is also, it is a human trait. It is not a gender related trait, but don't be shy. It is okay to ask. At the most, they are only going to say no. And and it will really help you to improve your networking skills. I'm serving in this when I was, they elected me chair of the non-profit organization. We're a tiny non-profit organization, and we take care of, the healthcare needs in rural Kenya. And so we have an office in United States, and the NGO is operating in Kenya. And when they didn't, when I said, my God, fundraising is not my expertise. I hate to say this. I did not grow up saying, I can never raise funds ever. When my son was in school, they have to collect some money, for some scout or something. So you know what, and then to buy cookies. So, you have to buy so many dollars worth of, cookies. So every, my colleagues would put it out there in the table. So we all will go and sign up, give me one box of cookies and then pay $10. When my son had to go collect money, we would just give the money ourselves. I would not go and put his note out there saying, my son Naveen is collecting, money for cookies. It is too much time, too much hassle, and I would feel really bad. So what I'm saying is, now I've just been elected chair. I warned my other board members. I said, folks, this Hema is zero in fundraising. So you have chosen the wrong person. They said, no, you please take care of other things. Fundraising, we will take care of. So that is why that collaboration matters. I am zero in that area, but I have other people to help me out. So improved networking skills, improved EQ. emotional quotient, extremely important as a researcher. As a researcher, you are going to get upset. As a researcher, most of the papers are going to get rejected, I guarantee. Because do you know that 90% of the people, 90% of the researchers have not published even one A+ journal article in United States. 90. And these are in the greatest universities of United States. 90% of faculty members in the greatest universities of United States have not published even one A+ journal article in their career, because the acceptance rate is only 2 to 3%. There is some more, maybe 10, 15, 20% have published in A-level journals. Yes. So you will have to be prepared to face rejection. Rejection is going to be very, very hard. You're going to ask people to collaborate with you. They are going to say no. I guarantee 90% of the time, they are probably going to say no. Don't feel bad. Please improve your emotional quotient. Improved observation skills. Like that day when I found that professor coming down the escalator, I was ready, I was alert so that I could chase, and be ready waiting for him at the end of the escalator. So be observant, what is going on in the field, go to conferences, network, and if you're doing it remotely, that's also okay. So please do that, because these things help you not only in the personal front, they will actually have a nice spillover effect on the career front as well. So folks, thank you very much for listening to me for more than 1 hour. Now we have reached that point in our FDP where we would like to have some time for an individual exercise. Okay. I have 3 questions for you for your individual exercise. Please, I know that you are all going to get certificates. So it is important that all of you participate and fill out these questions and then put them in the chat box. So these are the 3 questions. And this is, think about yourself, okay? It's not about me anymore. It's about you. What barriers have you experienced in conducting high quality research? High quality research is an A+ journal, an A-level journal, or a B-level journal, something like that. What are the barriers? Number 2, what support do you need to conduct high quality research? Please describe. And the last question, what challenges have you faced in research collaboration? And do you have any suggestions for all of us, me and others who are all listening today, your fellow participants? How did you address those challenges? That is extremely important. We would all like to learn from you. So the time is, Indian standard time is probably about 6:42 p.m. now. Take about 10 minutes or so, 8 to 10 minutes to fill out these answers, and then put them in the chat box, and then we will try to, have some interactions with you. At this stage, let me stop and ask if any of the panel members have any questions before we get to the exercise. Professor Kirandi, Professor Verma, Professor Singh, I hope, I didn't hear anybody. So I'm hoping that people are hearing me and that the network is not off. Thank you.
Yeah, it is spot on. I mean, we were listening to you. It's very interesting. So attendees, you see the 3 questions and you have about 10 minutes, or 8 to 10 minutes to answer it. So please answer in the Q&A section. And basically at the end of this 10 minutes, we will
Dr. Hema, we have been flowing with your presentation. I was just flowing the way you have been speaking. Yes, that's why video was not on. Yes, Dr. Verma.
So please answer, and it's a request that try to be to be precise to the point.
Okay, friends. I hope you had enough time. So let us start the interactions. Professor Bedi, Professor Singh, Professor Verma, how do you want me to approach this?
Ma'am, I would request that you select, you would have definitely read these answers. So whom would you like to call? So if you suggest a name, we will ask our IT host to unmute them, and then they will ask the questions themselves.
Yeah. The reason, the problem is I am getting such we are getting such outstanding answers, outstanding answers, so that, so okay, so let's start with Dr. Latif. Latif. I didn't read the last name.
Okay, Mr. Arvind, will you unmute Dr. Latif?
I hope I got the right name, and because I think I don't know the last name.
Arvind.
Mr. Arvind.
Sir, he's unmuted, sir.
Okay. Mr.
So
Latif.
Yeah, Mr.
Yeah,
Latif.
I'm here. Yeah,
Yes,
good
yes.
afternoon, Professor.
afternoon.
I'm here.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Thank you very much, Ma, for the contribution.
Can you
Yeah,
tell me
yeah,
from where? Okay, please tell everybody from where are you? And
What did you say?
The country where you're speaking.
Nigeria. I'm from Nigeria.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Okay. So I just wanted to ask you, out of the 3 questions, I'll just want to focus on one of the 3 questions. So which one is really very important to you, in terms of, like this FDP? Which question is really important to you, Mr. Latif?
Question 1.
Question 1, okay. So what barriers have you encountered in conducting high quality research?
Yeah, like I stated in my write-up, lack of adequate access to data. So quality research materials.
Okay, lack of adequate, I didn't hear properly. Lack of?
Adequate data or research materials.
Okay. So, okay, the data, so, like with data, there are 3 types of data. One is what we call as the primary data, where you got to be out in the field there and, do field experiments, human experiments. So that is primary data. The secondary data is something which is available from the, from data banks, like data bank. So you don't, so that kind, if depending on what your field is, and what is your field, Mr. Latif?
What
Your
did you say,
discipline?
Professor?
What is your discipline, your field, your discipline, your field?
Industrial relations and human resource management.
Okay, Mr. Latif, I have to say that as a friend, it should not be difficult for you, because in human resources and industrial relations, one can easily find secondary data. You do not have to go to primary sources, like in terms of going to the field to collect data. And you can actually go into, if human resources, you can go into companies' annual reports, companies' web pages, and so on, and collect data which are already available from established data banks. It is, most of the data are now completely free. So first you got to develop a research question where that data is available. You have control over that, in the sense you can go and get it whenever you want. To very quickly, just to mention, when I started my dissertation, I was sending, to chief executive officers of the top 500 companies in the world about mergers acquisition. I got only 5 response back out of 500 CEO I sent to. CEOs are very busy, chief executive officers. So I didn't know, I panicked. I wasted 6 months. At that time, when I was continuing to do the literature review, I found out another way to solve the same research question by going into the annual reports of the companies. Companies publish their annual report where they give the profile of the top managers. Then I was able to go to the library, get hold of the data source, where I was able to get the profile of all the 500 chief executive officers and their teammates in those 500 companies. And I was able to do, so I didn't need to send a questionnaire out. So in your discipline, Mr. Latif, I would urge you to explore basically going into the company's website. Start with some big companies, because data are available for big companies. So once you have big companies and they have their annual reports all published, it is easy to start looking for data over there. But before that, you do have to identify your research question in such a way that you are the master of the data collection and data availability. You do not have to depend on other people to collect for you. I hope I was able to respond to your question, Mr. Latif.
Yeah, thank you very much, dear Professor. That was an outstanding comment.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You're
Thank
welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Latif.
Okay. So now next, I would like to, call on Miss Padmaja Patriat. Padmaja Patriyat.
Okay, Arvindji, please unmute Padmaja, Dr. Padmaja.
Yes, sir, she is unmuted.
Yeah, Padma.
Good evening, madam.
This
This is Padmaja Patnaik.
Okay, hi Padmaja. Yes.
Yeah.
So,
hello, madam.
Thank you. Thank you.
If you could
responses.
introduce yourself, where are you?
Yeah.
From? Which place?
Yeah, my name is Dr. Padmaja Patnaik. I actually belong to madam's physics department.
Oh, okay.
I work as a associate professor in a Centurion University of Technology and Management, Odisha. It's in India.
Okay.
So I am engaged in teaching BSc and MSc physics and MPhil PhD students, physics students.
Okay.
So, madam, first of all, thank you very much for you are a very natural speaker. You spoke very well. I was totally engrossed. Thank you. And you must have seen my response. And
Yes,
if you
so
want to ask me which is the most important question, then
for you. Yeah, correct.
Yeah, for
Absolutely.
me,
yes.
It will be question 2.
Okay. Okay. So what
I belong to a university, madam, which is very young university, less than 10 years. We don't have that much of fund to build up world-class laboratories, you know. So we need support from government and other agencies to give us projects to do, so that in the process we also bring our laboratory.
That, you know, you Padmaja, you have identified an excellent problem. In fact, that is one of the things I was planning to share with you all. Having institutional and national support is very, very critical for many of the disciplines. So that is why, you know, like if you look at some of the Chinese universities and why they have made such tremendous progress in across all disciplines in the last 20 years. By the way, I got some responses, you know, people were saying that if you send your journal, people are biased and they are not publishing articles from researchers from other universities. To all of you, I'm going to say, I beg to differ. When I look at every journal right now, science, engineering, business administration, many of the journal articles are actually coming from professors in China and some of the other European nations now, you know. So so if you look at the language, really, what is the difference between China and India, right? So I won't say that bias is a problem, but I go back to what Padmaja mentioned as the main issue in question number 2. Institutional and government support is absolutely critical. In China, there is huge reward. If you publish a journal article in an A+ journal, you are actually given a fantastic cash reward. So governments across the world, you know, if they're really interested in building their nation, you know, and all that, they will have to get back to universities and try to promote high quality research, A+ research, and support them, you know. And if you're in science or engineering, medicine, pharmacy, you will have to support them. So Padmaja, first, I'm sorry to hear, you know, that the lack of support is coming in the way of the high quality research. So at this stage, the only recommendation I can make is, if you can find somebody to collaborate with in some other part of the world where they do have access to good resources. But so you have to examine your skill set. If there's something that you can contribute from your skill set, which is not available in the skill set of these people in other parts of the world and who are in such high-powered universities, you may be able to be a team member, you know, in that research project. I know that in United States, there are many projects, especially, but if they're not sensitive, if it is in the defense industry, forget about it. Defense is a very, very sensitive sector. But if it is some other general sector, you will be, they are also looking to collaborate with people from India, China, and the BRIC nations. Because here also, you know, nobody's perfect. So if there is something that, you know, you can contribute to, if you have got a good idea, try to attend these online seminars and online conferences. Padmaja, please try to attend international online conferences. Try to network with them. Don't give out your idea completely. I know many questions were, you know, that ideas are getting stolen. Yes, they are getting stolen. So be very selective and get a third party to introduce you to this person. Because making a cold call, you know, suddenly going and shaking hands remotely with somebody is not going to work. See, for example, in my case, my colleague was the intermediary, right? My colleague's dissertation advisor was whom I was able to interact with. So you will have to find somebody in the in-between who can introduce you to this team in this part of the world. So try to do that, get into LinkedIn, get into such social media and try to get rid of those intermediary. And I hope, and good luck with that, good luck.
Thank you. Thank you very much, madam.
Okay. So professors, panelists, do we have time for one or two more questions or should we?
Yeah, one question more at least.
Okay. So one more question. So let me go to Dr. Shantanu Chakravarti. Okay.
Mr. Arvind, please unmute Dr. Shantanu Chakravarti.
By the way, I want to mention to all the participants, I wrote so many names here. I've written so many names to call on. I wrote 45 names to call on, but because I'm looking at the screen and then the sheet of paper, I'm not able to read my own handwriting. I want to apologize to all the participants. All of you had equally good questions. And then it just now comes down to this old woman trying to make sense of her own handwriting. That's all it is, okay? So don't get alarmed if we did not call on you.
Dr. Shantanu, please introduce yourself.
Yes, sir. I'm actually assistant professor in Techno India University, and I've been taking a lot of research papers, journal work on that. So I got very high quality publication in some of such as LV Sir, Springers, and IEEE also. But I also had questions with regard to the barriers of conducting high quality research. So mainly in my case, the barrier that I have faced while different research papers or collaborative research which I have performed is in identifying the gap through literature survey. Because unless or until you proposed your method, proposed work, you have to do a thorough literature survey and you need to come out with a particular research gap. Sometimes in some of the rejections that I faced while doing or conducting high quality research was identifying that particular research gap by going through the survey that or by going through my literature survey, and then whatever was the proposed gap, so that there always lies a particular gap somewhere. So that was my first particular answer to the question one. And the second one was, what support do you need to conduct high quality research? There's a lot of support that is needed for a high quality research. Not only you have to know about the research gap, but you also have to know about the research methodology that you need to follow. You need to opt for, whether you are using a primary data or you are using a secondary data, then what are the statistical tools that you'll be using? How will you be working with those particular statistical tools that to come out with stringent results, findings, and conclusion? And third, in collaborative research or in research collaboration, the area of interest, the domain knowledge, the skill sets, these are the challenges that I faced, and obviously the rejections because of all that.
Okay, Dr. Chakravarti, thank you for the responses. You are very right, because when I made a list of, what I would consider as my own barriers and all the other support I would have needed, you're exactly, on the mark, on the dot in terms of all the identification. But, so let me, just mention that when you look at the barriers to conducting high quality research, and this is my very general observation, which I'm going to base on, what you shared with us, I have come up with 4 types of barriers to conducting high quality research. 4 types of barriers, okay? The first barrier, and please, I may, I have read so many responses and, from all of you very quickly, I try to read as many as possible. And with some of you, I may not have to agree because when we start identifying issues here and there. So let me mention 4 types of barriers I have experienced across all the roles I have played in this research journey. The number 1 is the personal barrier. Friends, you may not like what I'm saying. The personal barrier is what? Personal effort, putting our effort, putting our time, putting our motivation, putting our consistency, putting our, our emotional quotient, putting our work ethic, putting our values out there, patience, honesty. This is the number 1 barrier to conducting high quality research, which is the personal dimension. I have seen people who are in very, very ordinary universities producing with very little support, producing the best research possible. I have also seen so many faculty members in United States in universities as diverse as Harvard University to Berkeley, to the biggest names you can think of, to very mediocre universities with no publications whatsoever other than a couple of case studies. So of course, if you come from if you're already a graduate from an A+ university, you will be employed in that same university. So maybe they became great consultants. I don't know. But I have seen from my own experience, my own family member, my sister is the #1 managerial accountant researcher in the world. Number one, or top 3. This year she may be #1, next year she may be #2, but she's in the top 3. The number of billions of citations or the journal articles is amazing. She's a mother of 2 children. The second is just starting college. She teaches a very big teaching load every year. She is serving and directing so many dissertation advisors, dissertation topics. When I see, and the same thing, the professor I chased down the elevator in Washington, DC, he was in an A-level university, not A+ university. He was the #1, the world guru in mergers acquisitions. So with these people, what have I seen with a family member and with this colleague? The personal effort, the time, the motivation, the EQ, the work ethic, the consistency, and then to go on, to learn from failure, to move on, was been simply spectacular. I learned from these 2 great individuals. That's the first barrier. Second barrier is all of you, as you all identified, Dr. Shantanu, you have identified, Dr. Padmaja has identified, and Dr. Latif has identified. Institutional barriers are number 2. Institutional barriers, national barriers, lack of funding, lack of infrastructure, lack of system support, lack of doctoral students to help us in the research journey, then too much teaching. If you have too much teaching to do every semester, too much committee work, too much service obligations, and all that, obviously we don't have time for research, okay? So that's the second set of barriers, institutional and university and national barriers. Number 3 is the whole ecosystem. The ecosystem, that means our peer group, our peer group. Do we have, supportive, family members? Do we have supportive colleagues, supportive mentors, who are willing to give some time to us? That is also a barrier. Sometimes, when we get a rejection, Dr. Shantanu, you were talking about the rejections. I have practically, I completely understand, last 30 years, it's been one rejection after the other in one journal after the other. The way I got to 38 journals is after 300 rejections, really. Right? It is the extent, that's how it is. So having a good set of colleagues who will support you, a peer group who will support you and say, okay, Hema, it is okay to get rejected in A-level journal. Now take those ideas, take the feedback, and let's move on to A-. My sister used to say a very good quote, which was shared with her by one of her dissertation professors. That professor said, as soon as the rejection comes back, immediately, revise it and send it to another journal. Take, work on some of the doable, doable feedback and send it to another journal. Don't delay, don't get upset. So that's the second set of barriers, the third set of ecosystem. And the last one is having good people, honest, trustworthy people to collaborate with. I was mentioning to Dr. Padmaja just some minutes ago about, the lack of because of the barriers were lack of institutional, the national level resources. You have to, at this point, really start somebody to collaborate. We are all in the same situation. Dr. Shantanu, I can tell you, whatever problems and barriers you have experienced, it's exactly like I'm thinking of myself, exactly same set of barriers, exactly. So what I did was I revised my strategy. I revised my way of working because I knew my limitations, and then, so now I'm doing a lot of collaboration. I've decided this is where I need to focus on. And I'm also at this stage in my career where it is okay, for me to not focus on the basic research, but I do understand. And so hopefully, and physics, did you say, Dr. Shantanu, you were in physics, or what discipline were you in? Are you in? What's your discipline?
My discipline was data analytics and in management. Presently, I'm also working on some research paper. But what exactly I'm looking for is the funding, because neither UGC is providing the funding, neither any AICT is providing the funding, and neither we have minor or research projects that is being funded by UGC or AICT as of now.
So Dr. Shantanu, this is the kind of suggestion I have for you and Dr. Padmaja, because the funding has come up in many of the great questions I've received. when there is no funding, instead of waiting for funding, the funding may come or may not come. You'll have to start for looking for those secondary sources also, as I was mentioning to Dr. Latif from 7 minutes or 10 minutes earlier. So that's, like, this is how I solved the problem. And all the people I know who are in science and engineering, every time they write for a grant, it gets rejected. You know something, right? You agree, right? Even if you write, first of all, it's hard to even apply to international grants, apply to local grants, national grants. Rejection is 99.9%. Greatest universities are working together. The Big 10, we call them the Big 10 universities, which are the massive universities in the United States. University of Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State University. They send the Nobel laureates to write proposals together. And guess what? The rejection rate is 95% even then. So I can understand, how difficult it is to get funding. So what you could do in your field, data analytics, especially in data analytics, I would recommend Dr. Shantanu to start looking for secondary sources. Something that you can look, you can still do, you go back to literature review. Are there some easy, maybe you cannot get A+ journal, but you can definitely get an A journal. Data analytics is so hot right now, right? In every discipline. So maybe you can, come up with some research ideas. Okay, that, maybe in the field of healthcare, data analytics is not that deeply penetrated as it is in some other discipline. So just takes industry, start studying at the industry level. There was one question saying that companies are not giving us data. I agree with you. Companies will not give us data. So is there another way to get company data? When I want to do some research on India, and I had the same problem, I just went to the biggest companies of India so I can get their annual reports. I can do a content analysis. So that way I can at least get 50 companies, Indian companies where I do have data. But no, I didn't ask anybody because nobody will give me. I know that, So this is the time for all of you who are suffering, who cannot get funding, and all these other issues, to start looking at secondary sources of data collection. Secondary, where you can sit at home remotely, you can, as long as you have good internet speed, and most of the data are free. So I'm going to say, Dr. Shantanu, start exploring secondary sources of data so that you can do some research without funding and try to collaborate. As I mentioned with Dr. Padmaja's case earlier, you also try to collaborate with other institutions where they probably have more access to funding. So your role will be idea generation, literature review, doing the paper and many other things. The other folks can, start looking into fundraising and, getting funding. So at this time, collaboration is the way forward. But I do understand funding is a very big problem. And all of you who are still listening to me, I want to caution you, funding has become even worse now. Believe me, economies have tanked. US is going through a crisis. India is going through a crisis. Europe has already gone through a crisis. And the next several years, funding is going to be even more difficult. Please don't depend on funding to continue to progress in your career. Funding, if it happens, I'm sure it will at some point, good. But see other ways of doing your research. Please don't stop your research, please. So far, all the research I've done, except one where I collaborated, all the other research, I had zero funding. I had full teaching load. I just decided that I'm going to use only secondary source. I can sit in my room at home. I can take care of my son, when he was young. I can keep the rice on the pressure cooker and still I can be on the computer and collect data. This is how I managed. And, I hate to say this, but we'll have to look for creative ways for doing research. I know that this is not the response that you all were looking for, but I'm just trying to be practical based on all the gray hair I have, Thank you so much. And wonderful questions. And to all of you, I do have my email address, listed. I think it was in the first slide. I'll be happy to continue the conversation with all of you who also posted equally good questions. I would love to interact with you. And I would like to, share from my experience, just with the hope that maybe some of it may be potentially useful to you. Let's keep the conversation going. Please send me email with the same, set of responses, and we will continue our conversation there. And thank you all. So at this stage, I want to turn this over to the panelists, for the next step in the FDP.
Okay, so this was quite an engrossing session, and we have received many answers, and we are really sorry because of paucity of time, because of our time constraints, we have not been able to address many more questions which could have been. Okay, so as ma'am rightly said, you can basically send her your concerns or your answers over email, and you can keep this conversation going. Now it's time that we move to the second session, and I hand over this dais to Dr. Hema Krishnan. to continue with the second part. Thank you.
Okay, friends, first of all, thank you for attending the first part. This part, I'm not going to take more than 15-20 minutes, and you will find me with much less passion here. You know, the first, I have to apologize because maybe my voice was raised in that first part, because that is so dear to me. You know, that is what I have been for the last 30 years of my life. You know, that's a very big chunk of my life. It's all around the research, right? So that is why my voice was raised. I was objecting to some of the, the answers, and I said all these crazy things. In this part, I'm going to be very calm because it is a very general kind of a topic. This topic is, and for people who have already reached that stage in their career where you really want to make a difference to help the nation. It can also happen if you are, in the early stage of your career, working in some very disciplines like medicine and law, or, like a pharmacy, the sciences and so on. So this is, can we do any research which can help the nation? All those articles we're publishing, all the research we are doing, can we shape our national policy? So to understand that, I have an ecosystem framework, it's called, because when we look at research which can shape public policy, it means it is very, very complex. At the heart is the university, and the university has all these clients. Clients are the students, the clients are the parents of the students who pay their tuition fees and so on. A university system has got all the employees. A university system has got all the suppliers to the university, all the competitors with whom universities may even collaborate. And then of course, all the banks and the financial institutions, which are so involved, in the educational system for a nation and for the university. And then outside, we have all these forces which are really impacting how universities function, political environment, legal, socio-cultural, economic, infrastructure, and so on. So what are the expectations of all these stakeholders? One or two I will just pick based on what the Amity description. Amity, in your early, your YouTube description, you mentioned about the new patents, I don't know how many thousands it was. So that's a great thing, So that is an expectation. The ecosystem expects the university system to be obtaining new patents. The ecosystem expects the university to solve technical problems. The university is expected to maintain a nurturing environment that can cater to all kinds of learner segments. And most importantly, a university system is expected to maintain a steady flow of knowledge across society. That is absolutely critical. That is why we are all doing research at the heart. We are doing research not just because it is interesting to me or to everybody else. It has also got to be useful. I did not have this word useful in the first part of my presentation because that's, to focus on how to just be a researcher. But once we have reached this stage, let's start to do some research which is going to be useful in nation building. So what I did was 3 years ago in LinkedIn, one of the people who was in, who has got, I don't know, who's in the Indian Railways, that person came across one of my articles. It was like a practitioner type of article, and asked me whether I would do a case study on Indian Railways. It's more, just for their magazine. Okay, it was just for the magazine. And so I said, I'll be happy to undertake this little study. And I have, as Indian Railways, I've only been a customer of Indian Railways. I never really read about Indian Railways. So this project gave me opportunity to read about the Indian Railways. And this is what I came to understand about the Indian Railways, that it transports to 8.4 billion passengers a world. It transports 1.2 billion ton freight a year. It is the 4th longest railway network in the world. It is one of India's largest employer, if you add the organized and the unorganized sector, and it contributes 2.5% of India's GDP. It is an unbelievable, mind-boggling enterprise. And if you look at the Delhi Metro and all other metro, which is one of the most recent innovations, it's all part of the railway, network, which is amazing. So when I did this study, I realized until the 1990s, all these challenges, which you all, people who have used Indian Railways, you also know that these were the challenges, heavily subsidized. It was a loss-making entity, lack of funding, just like we all don't have funding for research. Even this poor Indian Railways until recently really did not have. Now In the United States, we have the network called Amtrak, zero funding, chaos, confusion. So please don't think this is an India problem, lack of funding. Infrastructure, lack of infrastructure is a universal problem. It's also a US problem. No funding for upgradation and modernization, say safety conditions, hygiene, and so on. This is what I read. And then I read that in the last 15, 20 years, some changes took place that after Indian economy opened, there was a tremendous infusion of funds for, government funds for improving India's infrastructure. And this is the point which I wanted to emphasize. That funding, where was it directed? And so, that funding actually really went into all the great educational institutions, because the only way you could improve India's infrastructure is by knowing what you need to do. How do you improve locomotives? How do you improve, platform service and so on? Look at all the disciplines involved here. So research findings from medicine, science, engineering, humanities, social sciences, business, and law. They were all this interdisciplinary approach. All research findings came together to reveal what the great opportunities are to improve the Indian railways, and also what the potential challenges are. And Dr. Shantanu, all of you will like this, that there was so much improvement in information technology at the same time. And then Y2K happened in 2000, and now we know, and I had the pleasure of riding in the Delhi metro last year. Amazing experience. Anyway, so all this came together, to really produce some great innovations in the railway system. Social media played a very big impact. Now, no one is going to go to and stand at a counter to get a ticket. Of course, right? That's all old world. Imagine now how you book your tickets. And then this is also a very important point in connection with, building the research for the nation, expansion of public-private government partnership. So all of you, my friend, my dear participants, when we talk about funding, especially in the disciplines that you are all in, where it's really hard to do that secondary research, which I talked about. I know what I said is easier said than done. In many of your disciplines, you need funding. Impossible. But unless funding, these three entities work together, public, private, and government, it's really hard to make this very big difference in these key sectors of the world, like transportation, for example. All this is important. So what I did was, when I did this study, I was asked to, present the findings, as to, how Indian Railways, if it's a case study, and if you look at the ecosystem approach, who are the key stakeholders? Then I told this person who was the editor of that magazine that it is so complex. It is so complex that it is impossible to do justice to this article in 2 pages. So I am just going to this is where the research question becomes important. Who is the key stakeholder, I said, in the Indian railway system? I have to just decide, I have to force this definition. Otherwise, I will not be able to produce this 2-page paper. I said, let me look at India's base of the income pyramid, the poorest of the poor. For those of you who are not in the business disciplines, it's called the base of the income pyramid, is a BOP, where I believe up to 50% of India's population, 40 to 50%, is called the very poor section of the society, which is a solid 500 million, which is an amazing population. I mean, it is so big. And imagine the kind of research you can do. Imagine the research you can do in this particular segment, just in this segment alone. I said, let me take the position of the India's base of the income segment, but I'm not going to think of them, they're so poor, they're so impoverished, because that base of the income, that represents a very big customer base for the Indian railways. That poorest of the poor section represents an employee and a supplier base for Indian railways. That poorest of the poor in that income segment represents an entrepreneur for the Indian railways. So when I looked at this particular base of the income as a customer, as an employee, and as an entrepreneur, things became very bright. It was a positive feeling, really. It was a positive feeling. It was not like all those documentaries, which people see in the United States. Oh, India is so poor. Oh, this is happening in the platforms. Because when we start looking at it, the context is different. And we see the progress made. It was quite a nice feel-good story. So here, I don't want to read this out, because it's just this is how I positioned my, my particular that little article, I said, if I look at the base of the pyramid as a customer, employee, and entrepreneur, what are the sectors which are influenced by the relationship between Indian Railways and the base of the income segment? And I saw these were all the areas which are self-explanatory, like in the infrastructure, modernization, agriculture, e-commerce, tourism. What's the government investment in the ecosystem? They have invested in the infrastructure, in the agriculture, in the supply chain, e-commerce, education, health, and the private and foreign investment scope. That means if you want to now further improve Indian Railways and make it better for the base of the income pyramid so that they become customers, because let's face it, folks, not everybody can fly, go by fly, take the airlines. Most of the millions of the population in many of the emerging countries are still using the railway system. So can we make it more attractive to that base as a customer? And these are some of the areas I listed. Two things I just wrote was tourism, consumer goods, IT, data analytics, and so on, where the investment scope is tremendous. The base of the income pyramid is also an excellent employee as an organized sector, as an unorganized sector. It's not the people who are directly employed with Indian Railways, but the people who are indirectly employed, and those are, all those employees too, as a labor force, direct and as third-party labor, platform operations, infrastructure operations, hygiene, safety, food, catering, retailing, unbelievable, in terms of the sectors which are influenced. And what kind of scope is there? And why am I focusing on the last column? Because here are some research opportunities. Because these employees represent direct employees and as a third-party contractor, laborer in platform operations, in the infrastructure operations, in the safety, education, food, catering, renewable energy, waste management, and so on. So let us see where those research opportunities are, based on which discipline you are in, really. That is something that you can think about. Last, the base of the income segment is a great entrepreneur. When we look at the even olden days, when we used to go from Delhi to Madras, and we 1.5 days, by that Grand Trunk Express, it is amazing to see, how entrepreneurial, things are happening on the Indian platforms. One of my best memories in my life, which I will carry with me to my grave, is those train journeys on the Grand Trunk Express and the Tamil Nadu Express from Delhi to Chennai. Amazing, those 36 hours to see, like it is, tears are coming in my eyes. So all that I can say is as an entrepreneur. And today, when I look at those poor people as entrepreneurs and what all they do, it's like amazing, So what we need is the private and the foreign investment and the government support, which has already taken place, to really make sure, that they get their opportunities as entrepreneurs. Microfinancing is absolutely critical. Microfinancing, advertising, and then people who are in the middle class and upper middle class should encourage, our, local artisans, local crafts, and so on. So this is what, I did, and we published, this is 2016. Time goes by fast. I didn't realize it's almost 4 years. Okay, I thought it was 2 years anyway. And then I was very happy to read a couple of years ago that India actually started like a train and transportation institute or a university. And actually it was the world's third train institute. Some other countries also have train institutes, and in the year 2018. So it brings all these things together for shaping public policy. The university's graduates will provide HR training. They will build capabilities in the nation. They will modernize and expand research. They will build the nation's infrastructure. They will build the entrepreneurial skill set. And they will, of course, which is very, very important, contribute to large scale employment. So if you look at that, this is how, like you take a small sector, just one organization, which is called Indian Railways, and you can see how you can do research really to tap into this, and to be a small part of the nation building efforts. So folks, that's all I really wanted to say. I'm going to end I'm going to do this stop share. Yeah. And so I think I've just reached the end of the time. And so I'm just going to turn this back to the panelists.
Thank you, ma'am. It has really been a very engrossing session, both the sessions. I was basically very keen on learning what are the impact factors and what are the ways in which one should avoid publishing in predatory journals and such things. And we have obviously received so many responses to the questions that you have asked, and otherwise also even before the those 3 questions were popped out, we had received around 100 different questions. Now, we have to close this session, and that's the that's a sad part of any webinar also, or FDP. Now I request Dr. Manjeet Singh to have a vote of thanks.
Dr. Hema, first of all, let me congratulate you and thank you for your energy. The way you speak from heart. Your experience speaks. Because if we see in the today's scenario, if we interact with the different faculty members, maybe senior people or the younger generation or the middle people in the teaching community, we find very few people who speak from heart. The way you have been speaking and non-stop, because basically we are interacting with you since 5 p.m. and now it is 7:35 in India p.m. and you are speaking non-stop from 5 to 7:35. And what you have been speaking, I must congratulate you and we must thank you. I think it is a great privilege for the whole Amity University, for the whole, all Amity faculty members, scholars and students across the globe. For we got a chance. We got a chance because as far as your last webinar was there, which was there in the month of June, all records were broken, where 6,000 attendees were there in that webinar. And that was a record, and that is a record till date. Yes, nobody has been able to break. But today, the way you have been speaking, it is wonderful. Wonderful, and your experience is speaking. The way, because I have been listening throughout the session, and I was just seeing the kind of learning what you are giving, that is there for the as well as youngsters, the younger people, yes, who have just entered the as well as the maybe the teaching profession or the research profession, as well as the middle level is there, and the other ones also who are thinking let's do research, maybe by compulsion or maybe by heart, because sometimes by compulsion also you have to do the research when the institute force you, either you do research or you are out. Like in Amity also, it is a rule. Yes, you have to do research. You have to publish minimum 2 papers. Otherwise, thank you very much. You have to leave the Amity because this is there. And the way you have been explaining the whole things, the basic things and the complex things are also wonderful. Dr. Hema Krishnan, I am really thankful to you from my heart. I am also speaking from my heart the way you have been speaking and thanking you because you have explained both the parts. Part 1 and part 2, and the part 2 where you have explained the as well as the case study of the Indian Railways is concerned and your experience, and the way you have explained the metro experience, escalator experience, and then you have produced 2 or 3 wonderful papers with that person. The way you have explained the collaboration part, it is a wonderful thing, because we got very few people, because I have been interacting with a number of researchers across the globe. I find very few researchers like you who speak from heart and who give the practical knowledge, who give the logical knowledge, who doesn't speak from mind, they speak from heart. Thanks a lot, Dr. Hema Krishnan, for giving this wonderful FTP, because we have been after your life. Yes, Dr. Hema, when we can have a FTP, when we can have FTP, ultimately you, and thank you, yes, for acceding to our request. And on behalf of our Honorable Founder President, sir, because he is the main person who is the constant source of motivation, who is always motivating the whole Amity family. Maybe it is a Amity Global Business School or any campus, any institute, he is a constant source of motivation. Do something. Do some good FTP, some MDP, some webinars. Yes, call some good people, yes, who can interact with our faculty members, research scholars and students. Yes, where we can gain knowledge. And I think this online mode, because this was also our first experience, online mode, I think it is better than the offline mode, where I think more interaction is there and more learning is also there. Because for last 1.5 hours, yes, we have been constantly listening to you, the way you have been communicating the whole thing. Now, as well, on behalf of our Honorable Chancellor also, Dr. Atul Chauhan, he is a young dynamic Chancellor and he is always motivating. Yes, bring some good people. Bring some good people online where we can interact. Our Honorable Group Vice Chancellor also, he was here for a few minutes, Dr. Gurinder Singh, who is our Honorable Group Vice Chancellor, but suddenly he has to go because he got a emergency call, and maybe he may join in between also. on behalf of all the Amity faculty members, the whole Amity family, faculty members, research scholars, students, HOIs, everyone. Yes, we are thankful to you, Dr. Hema, and we are thankful to all the attendees also, because that is very important, because without attendees, we cannot do anything. We may plan a lot of things, but in case hardly anybody is there, then thank you very much. And the attendees are there from across the globe. I was just, because I was simultaneously managing both the Zoom and the YouTube. On YouTube also, a lot of queries were there. I was trying to reply to them. And people are there from South African countries. People are there from Indonesia, Malaysia, Cambodia also, from London also. People are there from different Amity campuses across the globe, like Singapore. I was seeing people were there. People were there from as well as the Philippines also. Malaysia, always we are having a good strength of people who are in Saudi Arabia. People were there. We are thankful to all the attendees because different time zones are there. People are there in different time zones, because if you see in Malaysia, that is 2.5 hours ahead of India. Yes, people, we are thankful to all the attendees from across the globe. And let me thank my, this miniature, small, passionate team also. Dr. Parne Verma, yes, who has been moderating all the sessions. Right from the beginning, we started this whole online series. Yes, the way you have been handling Dr. Verma, thanks a lot. Dr. Kirandeep Kaur, because she is working with me very closely, right from selecting the persons who will be there, and from the preparing the brochure also, and everything promoting. Yes, she is working very closely with me, with the whole department. And thanks a lot, Dr. Kirandeep. And Miss Soji Thomas. Yes, she is a silent worker. The way she has been basically sending the emails, her responsibility is whenever webinar or FTP is there, she has to send the communication to all our people. Yes, I give her the list and she is there. Soji Thomas, yes, I'm thankful to you. Yes, I'm thankful to the whole IT team also, Dr. Soti. Yes, without them, we cannot do anything. And our IT host, Mr. Arvind. Arvind, thanks a lot. You have been supporting like anything, and the backend team also. And on behalf, yes, let me thank all the Amity faculty members, research scholars, and students also who attended this program. And Dr. Hema Krishnan, we will not leave you now here also. We will plan something more with you. One webinar we have conducted, one FDP we conducted, and I think we discussed something yesterday also. We will plan that thing also now next time. And thanks a lot. Let's collaborate. Let's do something jointly also with George University.
First of all, thank you all, because we get energy from the participants. You're absolutely correct, Dr. Singh. And you participants, I want to thank you from the bottom of the heart. Your questions were outstanding. So today it's just about past 10 a.m. here. And I know the whole day I'm going to think about your questions. And it has given me a lot to think about. And I have learned, I have to say, my dear friends, all my participants and all you panel members, I have learned a lot from you. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hema. Thanks a lot. Thanks to all attendees. Thank you to the team. Thank you.
So now can I close the session?
Yes.